Hey guys, it's Dave from Animal Experiences. If you're like me, you're going a little stir crazy at this point, and I'm missing seeing all my friends at schools and libraries and birthday parties. So I put together a little lesson about amphibians. I find them very, very interesting. I hope you will too. You may not know this, but we have 18 kinds of amphibians living in Rhode Island. And so I'm going to show you some that are outdoors that I've found, and then I have some here at my house. I'll show you some of those guys too. But I hope you'll enjoy it, learn a little bit about them, because they're very, very cool creatures. All right, take care now. Bye-bye. All right, so here we are by a vernal pool, and that's where most frogs and other amphibians will lay their eggs, where there's no fish and less chance of predation on the babies. This is a pretty sizable mass of eggs right here. Kind of hard to see much other than the fact that it's a mass. It looks kind of jelly-like. But I did take some out so we can get a better look at them. These are a type of frog egg, and I'm not sure what kind of frog. But they're not bullfrog eggs, I know that. So let's look at them a little more closely in the container I've got right here next to the pool. So these are not new eggs. These would have been little round dots when they were first laid. You can see they're rather elongated now. There's probably some that are starting to move. There's also there's some bugs and worms in here, and nymphs. And they feed on these babies. As I move the camera around, you may see some little twitching with these babies because they're starting to move in their eggs. So these guys will develop a little bit more before they're ready to be out and swimming around. But as I said, these are frog eggs. Well, there's one guy moving around quite a bit over there. Yeah, it's really just a couple warm days away from these guys being out and about. But I'll have to do some research, see if I can figure out what kind of frogs these are from. I'm going to put these guys back into the pond in just a moment. Once they hatch in there, they'll have all sorts of microorganisms they can feed on. So they should do well in here. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can find in this shallow water some salamander eggs. Salamander eggs are usually in a kind of gelatinous, jelly-like mass of, well, it's kind of a clear-looking mass with, you can see the individual eggs within it, and usually able to pick them up without doing them any harm. So I'm going to see if I can grab some right now. Alright, so these are salamander eggs, freshly laid, probably last night. You can see the individual eggs in there. And what will happen is over the coming days and weeks, those will begin to elongate, and eventually you'll be able to see them moving inside there, and then they just will be out and swimming around. So they're pretty cool. This is a fairly small mass right here. A lot of times the mass is big enough where I can't really hold it steadily in my hand, but this one's a pretty small one. So those are spotted salamander eggs. I'm going to see if I can grab a spotted salamander to show you what an adult looks like. And I'm pretty sure there's some in here. So I'm going to gently sit this back in the water. See if I can feel around and find a salamander. These guys should be returning to land pretty quick. There's one right here. It does not want to be picked up. Alright, so there we go. There's an adult salamander. Whoop, fell back in the water. See if I can grab him again briefly. You can see the dark body with the bright yellow spots. These are the biggest salamanders in certainly in Rhode Island. This is not an especially big adult. They can get quite a bit bigger than this guy, but he certainly does not want to be held. As long as my hands are wet, no harm to him in holding him. And these guys live in in the forest, or it can be in your yard if you've got a yard with some wild areas in it with dead leaves and rotting wood, stuff they can get under where it's nice and damp. And he's down there under the water. You can see him. So spotted salamander is one of my favorite amphibians for sure. Okay, so these are eggs that were laid not last night, but the night before. I can see them pretty well down there. Now the funny thing is, those white masses are eggs as well. All from spotted salamanders. I used to think that the white ones were eggs that were bad or infertile, but it turns out there's something genetic in the females, and some of them lay the clear clusters like these here, and others lay the cloudy ones like this here, but they're all good eggs. Just pretty amazing the way they remain together in this little mass. Let's see if we can get a picture of these here. So you can see the individual eggs there. Pretty interesting. They're individual little clear sacs with an egg in each one, and yet they're all clumped together. So you can see they stay pretty nice, and even a week or 2 weeks from now, before they've hatched, they should still be in a pretty good clump like this. But I've always been fascinated by these eggs. So there's quite a few here. I've got, let's see, what can we count here? So I got the group I just put down. There's another bigger group right here. There's another group in very shallow water right here. Right there. Kind of attached to a leaf. The white ones are attached to the branch, which is very typical. Got another white batch over here. It's a very small little group here. And you can still see the baby salamanders or eggs, whatever you want to call them, inside that whitish mass. Pretty wild. So this guy, this friend sitting on my arm here, is a common toad. He'll probably jump off in a moment. But these guys are probably one of the better known amphibians, certainly around here. And this guy's been, oh gee, I've had him since he was just probably about half an inch long. He was a little toadlet when I got him. I guess he's about 2 years old now. Has done very well as a pet. These guys are very easy to keep. Chows down on crickets. He'll eat other bugs. If I put them in there, he'll eat worms. He's a very, very cool guy. I only have the one. Let's see if I can get a better look at him here. He's climbing up my arm. I figured he would hop off, but he seems to be coming up to the camera. Checking out the camera. We're gonna move this for a sec. Get him down here. Yeah, and get a good look at his face here. So, common toad. These guys really everywhere around here. I don't typically see them during the daytime. They're usually out in the evening hours is when you're most likely to find them. They're pretty noisy at breeding time. You can tell toad eggs from frog eggs because they're strings of eggs rather than big clumps. And they're pretty cool guys. I mean, he's an amphibian, so you know he was born in the water. When you touch a toad, they're usually a pretty dry animal, but they can't get too dry. They tend to stay burrowed in the ground or under things during the daytime, and again they'll come out at night or come out when it's damp. I've seen some pretty big ones over the years. Maybe maybe a body that was 5 or 6 inches across. This guy's not nearly that big. He's I don't know, maybe 2.5 inches in length, something like that. He's being pretty well behaved though, just sitting here for us. And let's see if we can look at his underside here. There we go. Now, we have a toad in Rhode Island that's called a spadefoot toad. If you look at the back foot, this guy, see that long toe? There's few spadefoots I've seen, they do not have a long toe like that. The toe is much shorter. But this guy's pretty willing to be handled. And I think that's just because he's been around and been picked up since he was pretty little. So he's a pretty cool guy. So we've seen today we've seen eggs, we've seen salamanders, seen tree frogs. We've got a lot of cool stuff around. Well, he's going to make some noise for us, I think. Well, he's also peeing on the rug. He's made some noise, but it's not very loud. I don't know if you could hear it. But and he's not puffing out under his chin, which he would do if he was making a louder noise. Alright, well, I'm going to put him back in his cage. Okay, so let's take a look at probably my second most favorite Rhode Island amphibian, which is a gray tree frog. We got one sitting right here, nice and quiet. Let's see if I can go pick him up. I probably won't sit still for long. But this is a gray tree frog. These guys are very, very cool. Certain parts of Rhode Island, they're super plentiful. But where I live, here in Riverside, you don't see them too often. This guy's been living here for, about 2 years. See, you climb on that branch. There's some other guys in here too. Got one sitting on a leaf down here. Let's see, there he is. The coloration can vary quite a bit with these guys. These guys love to lay their eggs in the covers of swimming pools. So if you happen to have a swimming pool with a cover over it, pretty late in the spring is when they usually lay their eggs. They don't lay them early like some of the frogs are breeding right now. So these guys can get a bit bigger than this, but they're not a real big frog. Certainly much bigger than the peeper tree frogs, which we have. And this guy's being pretty cooperative, sitting on my hand here. There's actually 6 of them in this terrarium. They've all been here for quite a long time. They love to eat crickets. They sometimes make some noise, but not a lot. Certainly not this time of year. All of mine in this aquarium are males. Let's see if I can get one of these guys to turn over, and we'll see the yellow coloration that the males have on the bottom of their legs. Let's see. I got one that doesn't want to get off and one that does not want to turn over for me. Oh, you got a glimpse of the yellow on his legs when he jumped. And this guy here, you can see a little bit of yellow on his legs when he's moving. So very, very cool frogs. Love the coloration on them. You get these guys on the bark of a tree, especially a tree that's got some grayish bark, you'll never even notice them. They blend in so well. They have a very distinctive mating call. And they usually breed, I'd say these guys are usually going to breed in June around here. This guy's trying to come up the glass. But they've been pretty cooperative. These are guys that I don't typically pick up, so for them to sit still like this is pretty cool.